Hello, my dear students of class 11 science. Welcome to biology class. We are dealing with the chapter Morphology of flowering plants. So today we'll begin with a new topic, that is taxonomic description of floral parts. It's in the page number 5.46. Okay, the topic is taxonomic description of floral parts. So in the last class we have seen the essential and the non-essential wholes, or the parts of a flower, and we have learned about the different parts like Calyx, Corolla, Androsium and Gynosium. So today we are going to discuss about the taxonomic description of those floral parts. So first of all, we'll describe about the calyx, also called the sepals. Okay, so calyx or sepals. So this calyx or sepal is the outermost hole or the part of the flower, or we can even say it's the lower part of the flower. And the unit of calyx is mainly the sepals, that is, it is made up of sepals, which are usually green in color. But sometimes the sepals can be colorful also. So when they are colorful, we will generally call it petaloid. Okay, so don't get confused. So calyx is mainly made up of sepals. Sepals are usually green in color, we know that. Okay, but sometimes the sepals can be colorful also, and when they are colorful, we used to call it petaloid. P-E-T-A-L-L-O-I-D. Clear? Now, over here, the most important term that you have to remember is polysepalous and gamosepalous. Okay, so what do you mean by polysepalous and gamosepalous? So when all the sepals are free, you can look in the diagram also, you can see the structure of a calyx or sepals. Okay, so when all the sepals are free, when they are not united, that means when they are joined with one another. But when they are not joined with one another, when they are free from one another. So as you can see in the figure here also, so this is the first calyx, second calyx, okay, the third calyx, let's say the parts. So these subunits of the calyx, they are not joined with one another. They are free from one another. Even here you can see that these two particle units or the calyx are not joined. So when all the sepals are free, then such calyx is called polysepalous. Okay, so when all the sepals are free, but when the sepals are united, then such type of calyx is called gamosepalous. Okay, so polysepalous means when the sepals are free from one another, but whenever the sepals are united, then it is called gamosepalous. So remember the term, what they mean by polysepalous and what they mean by gamosepalous. Now next one, what do you mean by epicalyx or hypocalyx? Now epicalyx is an extra hole or the part of the green sepals, like the organ which lie below and outside of the calyx. Okay, so just below the calyx you can see an extra hole or the extra part, this one, which just looks like the sepals, right? So this extra part or the extra hole, which are usually green in color, like sepal like organ, then it is called epicalyx. Just above the epicalyx you can see the presence of calyx. Okay, so this epicalyx will protect the floral organs, even it protects the calyx also, and that usually persistence. And this particular epicalyx, it occurs in some members of the family Rosaceae, like strawberry, okay, and in most members of the family Malvaceae. And we have already mentioned that it used to provide protection to the floral organs and also to the calyx also, and they're usually persistent. Clear? So remember, epicalyx means the extra hole which just lies below the calyx. Now next one, we learn about corolla or the petals, which are usually brightly colored, that we've already discussed in our previous classes. So it is the second hole of the flower present inner to the calyx, and it is made up of petals. Okay, and this corolla or the petals, it protects the essential holes like the stamens and the carpels, and they are variously colored, because we have seen the various colors of a flower. So that different colorful parts of the flower are generally the corolla or the petals. Okay, but sometimes they may be green in color. Okay, and whenever these petals are green in color, then they are said to be sepaloid. S-E-P-A-L-O-I-D, sepaloid. Now just like the polysepalous and the gamosepalous, here also if the petals are free from one another, then the corolla is called polypetalous, and if the petals are fused, then it is called gamopetalous. Like polysepalous and gamosepalous, here also polypetalous means where the petals are free from one another. Okay, then that corolla is called polypetalous, and when the corolla or the petals are fused with one another, then it is called gamopetalous. So we are getting the synonymous terms like polysepalous, polypetalous, gamosepalous, gamopetalous. So kindly remember those terms. Clear? Okay, now next one, we'll learn about the estivation of sepals and petals, each in the page number 5.49. Okay, the estivation of sepals and petals, page number 5.49. Now what is estivation actually? So estivation means the mode of arrangement of sepals and petals in relation to one another in a flowered bud. So estivation means just the arrangement of sepals and petals. So here we'll just see the arrangement of the sepals and petals with respect to one another on the floral bud. So depending on the arrangement of sepals and petals, we have got the four types, or let's say we have got the three types of estivations: open, velvet, twisted, and imbricate. We have got four types. Sorry. Okay, open, velvet, twisted, and imbricate. So we are going to discuss one of them. Okay. First of all, we'll discuss about the open type of estivation. So what does the open estivation means? Now, in the page number 5.49, currently you have to go through the figure number 5.85. You will see this particular diagram. So according to the diagram, we are going to learn about the four types of estivations: open, velvet, twisted, and imbricate. Now what does the open estivation means? Now in open estivations, the margins of the adjacent petals are sufficiently apart from each other. That means they are far apart from each other, they don't touch each other, or they don't overlap each other. Okay, so here the petals used to lie sufficiently apart from each other and usually forming as a mustard. Now let's talk about the important one, velvet. Now in velvet type of estivation, we will simply see that the petals lies close to each other, or they will simply touch each other. Okay, one more time saying that in velvet type of estivations, the petals lies close to each other, which are generally apart in case of open type. But here in velvet, the petals lies close to each other, or they will simply touch each other. That is, neither overlap the margin of the petals nor overlapped by the margin of the adjacent petals. So let's see the diagram. So can you see over here the figure number A? Figure number A is the velvet type of estivations. Here you can see that this is the sepal part, right, and these are the petals part. So the petals lies close to each other. Okay, or we can say they will simply touch each other. Even you can see here the floral diagram, the petals are simply close to each other, or they will simply touch each other, but they will not overlap each other. This is very important thing. They are just close to each other, or they will simply touch each other, but they don't overlap each other. Okay, and usually form in the plant called calotropis, in the flower called calotropis. Now let's talk about the third one, that's called the twisted or contorted estivation. Now what does this mean? In this case, one margin of a petal covers the margin of the adjacent petal, and the other margin is covered by the margin of adjacent petal. So here we can see some degree of overlapping, where margin of one petal is being covered by the margin of another petal, and in return that is also being covered by the margin of another petal. So let's go with the diagram, it will be clear for you. So can you see over here the figure number B? It is called twisted estivations. So here is the floral diagram. So this one is the petal. Okay, this one is the petal. Now let's talk about this margin. Okay, so this particular margin of one petal is being covered by the margin of another petal. This is the another petal. So this margin of another petal is usually covering this one, and again in return the same petal is being covered by the margin of another petal. Again this particular margin is being covered by the margin of another petal. So like this way we are seeing some degree of overlapping, okay, where the margin of one petal will cover the margin of the adjacent petal, and the other margin is covered by the margin of adjacent petals. So here again this particular margin of petal is being covered by these particular petals. Again the margin of the same petal is being covered by the margin of the adjacent petal. So this is called velvet estivation. Now fourth one, we'll talk about the imbricket estivation. What does imbricket estivation means? there is irregular overlapping of petals. Like in case of twisted, we are observing that the margin of one petal is being covered by the margin of adjacent petals, and return the other margin is covered by the margin of adjacent petals. So we are finding some degree of overlapping over there, but in a regular manner. Clear? But in case of imbricate estivations, we are finding irregular overlapping of petals. There are mainly four types: imbricate proper, quincunxial, ascending imbricate, and descending imbricate. Let's see the diagram and it will be clear for you what does what difference between twisted and the imbricate imbricate estivations. So as we already discussed that in case of twisted estivations, here the margin of one petal, suppose we are talking about this petal, okay, so the margin of this petal is being covered by the margin of this petal. Again, the margin of this petal is being covered by the margin of adjacent petal. So here we are observing the regular type of overlapping, right, where the margin of one petal is being covered by the margin of the adjacent petals. But here in case of the imbricate estivations, we are finding the irregular type of overlapping, we can generally say, okay, because here you can see that this particular petal is covering the margin of both the adjacent petals, but in return it is not been covered by any other petals. And also same thing, this particular petal is covering the margin of both the petals, but is not being covered by any other petals. But if you compare the same thing with the twisted type, here we will see the regular type of overlapping, but in case of imbricate, we don't see any type of regular overlapping among the petals. So as we mentioned that there are four types of imbricate estivations. First one is imbricate proper. So well-defined pattern is absent. We don't see a proper overlapping of petals in case of imbricate estivations. Then we'll come into the quincunxial estivations, where two petals external, two internal, and fifth with one margin external and the another one is internal. So in case of quincunxial estivations, two petals are external. Even you can see over here, this one is the external estivation one and this is the external estivation. So there are two external petals, okay. Then we will find two internal petals. So when you look over here, then we are finding the two internal petals also, and the fifth one, this fifth one will see the marginal external petals, okay. So this is the quincunxial estivation, the imbricate estivations. Now let's go to D, which is called the ascending imbricate estivation, where posterior petal being overlapped by the two lateral one, while they are overlapped by two anterior petals. So you can see over here, in case of the ascending imbricate estivation, here this particular petals is being overlapped by the lateral petals. Clear? So generally there is no need to go in details about the types of imbricate estivation, but you have to go through what is estivation and what are the four types of estivations. No need to go through the subtypes, okay, but just for a clarification I am just describing the diagram. So just remember, estivation means the mode of arrangement of petals and sepals in a flowered bud. There are mainly four types: open type, where the margin of the petals will be far apart from one another; then valvate, where the petals will lie close to each other, they will simply touch each other but they don't overlap. Then third one was twisted or confronted, where the margin of one petal will cover the margin of the adjacent petals and the other margin is covered by the margin of adjacent petals. We will find degree of overlapping but in a regular manner. And the fourth one was imbricate estivations, where there is irregular overlapping of petals. And mainly of four types. You can learn imbricate proper, quincunxial, ascending and descending. But I have told you that no need to go through the subtypes of imbricate estivation. Just remember what is estivation and what are the four types of estivation. Clear? Okay. Now next one we'll learn about perianth. Now what is perianth? So when we cannot distinguish, when we cannot separate between the petals and the sepals, then together the sepals and the petals will be known as perianth. Only when we are not able to distinguish between the sepals and the petals. Okay, so when we are not able to distinguish, when we are not able to make a distinction between the sepals and the petals, then they are collectively known as perianth. And the individual part of the perianth are called the tepals, T-E-P-A-L-S, tepals. And when they are green, they are called sepaloid, and when they are colorful, they are called petaloid. Okay, here also, when the petals are free, they are called polypetalous, and when the petals are fused, they are called gamophilous, polyphilous and gamophilous. Okay, so when petals are free, they are called polyphilous, and when petals are united, they are called gamophilous. So remember the term. What does gamophilous means? What does polyphilous means? What does petaloid means? What is tepaloid? What is perianth? And what is sepaloid? These are the essential or important terms you have to remember. Now, let's go to the next one. Androsium or the stamens, which are the male reproductive organ of flower. And we know that it mainly consists of a slender stalk called the filament, and it's composed of anther and the connective. Okay, and each anther has got two pollen sac. When you look into the structure of the anther, we will find the presence of pollen sac, which is also called the microsporangia. So this part, this is the anther part. When we cut the anther, then within the anther we will find the presence of anther sacs. Okay, so but let's say within the anther we will find the presence of this type of structure when we cut the anther. Okay, so within this part we will find the presence of pollen sacs like this. So this particular pollen sacs is also called microsporangia, and within this pollen sacs we will see the presence of pollen grains. Clear? So these are the pollen sacs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and generally you can see over here also is meant the anther lobe. Generally, anther is a bilobed structure. So when we will learn in class 12 in detailed structure, we will see the structure of the anther like this. Okay, so each anther is a bilobed structure, and this particular one is called the connective. Okay, so when the anther will mature, this particular connective, this particular pollen sac, they will rupture, and the pollen grains from the microsporangia will usually comes out. So here we will find the presence of pollen grains when the anther will mature and rupture. Okay, so these particular structures which are present at the four corners of the pollen, of the anther, are called the microsporangia or the pollen sac, and they contain the pollen grain. All right, and whenever the stamens are free, they are called polyandrous. Remember, so this is the filament part, this is the anther part, and this one is the connective part. And you can see here the anther lobe, and generally anther is dithecous, having two lobes. First lobe, okay, then this is the second lobe. All right, okay. Now next one is the cohesion of anther. Now what do you know cohesion of anther? So let's see what are different types. First of all, we'll talk about the monadelphous, because it's very important. It's the syllabus, so you have to remember what does monadelphous, diadelphous means. Okay, so first let's talk about monadelphous cohesions of stamens. So stamens means the male part of a flower. Remember, it's mainly composed of filament and anther. Okay, so monadelphous stamens, filaments of all the stamens are fused to form a tube-like structure. So here we can see the presence of a tube-like structures here. You can see, I think, right? So it forms a tube-like structures, and these tube-like structures is called the monadelphous stamen, because here the filaments of all the stamens are fused to form a tube-like structures. But in diadelphous, you can see here filaments of all the stamens are fused in two groups. So here you can see the filaments has been fused in two groups, first group and you can see in second group. Okay, this filament and the, when you can see here filament and the anther part. So here the filaments has been fused in how many group? Into two group, which you will find in P and in case of Cajanus. And let's talk about polydelphous. When filaments are united in more than two groups, here you can see the presence of nearly four groups, right? So here when the filaments have been united into more than two groups, then that is called polydelphous stamens. The next one is syngenesious. when anthers of all the stamens are fused and filaments are free. So here you can see that all the anthers are fused. You can see here the fused anther. So in case of syngenesious stamens, the filaments will be free. Okay, here the filaments are fused into single to structures, into two groups, into more than two groups, four groups. But here the filaments are fused. Filaments are free, but the anthers are fused. And such type stamen is called syngenesious stamens. Okay, and seen in Ageratum, sunflower, and suncus. Then number E is synandrous stamens. So when all the anthers as well as filaments are united to form a compound structure. So here you can see that the anther is also united and even the filament are also united. So when both the anther and the filaments are united and form a compound structure, then that is called synandrous stamens. Okay, so under questions we have learned about monadelphous stamen, diadelphous stamens, polyadelphous stamen, syngenesious stamen, and the synandrous stamen. So in monadelphous stamens, filaments of the stamens are fused to form a tubular structure. In diadelphous stamens, filaments are fused into two groups. Then in polydelphous stamens, filaments are fused in more than two groups. In syngenesious stamens, filaments will be free, but the stamens will be united to form a we have a synandrous one, when all the anthers as well as stamens are united to form a common structure, that is called synandrous stamen. So remember these 5 types of questions of stamens. Now let's talk about the addition of stamens. Okay, so first we have got epipetalous. Epipetalous means where the stamens are fused with the petals. Epipetalous. Okay, stamens fused with the petals formed in the flower called petunia. Then epiphyllous or epipetalous, where the stamens are fused with petal like perianth lobe. Perianth means when we cannot distinguish between the sepals and the petals. Okay, so when the stamens are fused with the petals like structure, then they are called epiphyllous or epipetalous. It's found in the flower called asphodilus. Then you have got gynandrous, where stamens are fused with gynosium. Example, calotropis. So we are going with the term called quotient stamens and the addition of stamens. So kindly go through these particular terms. Clear? Okay. Now, next one we will talk about the number of anther lobes. It's in the page number 5.52. So when both the anther lobes are present, then such anthers or stamens are called bithecous. Bi means two. Okay, so when both the anther lobes are present, then the stamen is called bithecous. It's seen in the flower called argemone. When there's only one anther lobe, then it's called monothecous. Mono means one. Okay, so when there's only one anther lobe, then that is called monothecous. But when both the anther lobes are present, then that is called bithecous. Okay, and each fertile anther lobe contains 2 pollen sacs or sporangia. I have told you that the fertile lobes of the anther contains the pollen sacs. Even I have told you that when you look in structure of the pollen grain, we will find this type of structure. Okay, this is the bilobe structure, first lobe, second lobe, and in each lobe we will find the presence of pollen sac or sporangia. So these are the pollen sacs or the sporangia which contains the pollen grain. So therefore a bithecous anther is tetrasporangiate, having 4 sporangia, and monothecous anther is bisporangiate, having 2 sporangia. So the diagram which I have done right now is the bithecous stamen having 2 anther lobe. Okay, having both the anther lobe. So when we are talking about the bithecous anther having the 2 anther lobe, then there will be presence of 4 pollen sac or 4 sporangia. But when we are only talking about the monothecous anther lobe or stamen, then there will be presence of only 1 anther lobe, and that 1 anther lobe contains 2 sporangia or the pollen sac. Clear? Okay, now let's go to the next slide. We'll learn about the gynosium or the pistil, the female part of a flower. Okay, and it's mainly composed of stigma, style, and the ovary. It's also called the pistils, and it's mainly composed of several carpels. And the carpel represent the megasporophylls, and generally pistil or the gynosium is composed of stigma, style, and the ovary, and within the ovary we will find the ovules. Okay, so even let's try to discuss just briefly about the function of stigma and ovary, though we have learned in our previous class also. The function of stigma is to receive the pollen grain, right? And pollen grain must belong to the same species. Only then it will be able to germinate. So on germination, the pollen grain will produce the pollen tube. Their pollen tube will run through the style, and from the style it enters into the ovary, and within the ovary we will find the ovules. Even you have learned in the class also that within the ovary we will find 3 antipodal cells. If you remember that thing, right? Then in the center we have got the central polar nuclei cells, which is diploid. You remember that thing? Then we have got the antipodal cells also. Okay. Now what happens is that through the pollen tube, the male gametes will enter inside the ovary, and it will lead to fertilization. Try to recall. One male gamete will fuse with the egg, that is called fertilization. It will form the zygote, and the second male gamete will go and fuse with the secondary polar nuclear cells. Remember, and it will form the primary endosperm nucleus, which will be triploid in nature. And since fusion of gametes occurs within the ovary, it's also called double fertilization. Good. Then mainly in the center, regarding the formation of primary endosperm nuclei, 3 haploid nuclei will be involved, and that is called what type fusion? Just try to recall. It is called triple fusion, and important because it will lead to the formation of endosperm. Okay, and then endosperm is 3n. 3n means triploid. So zygote will be diploid, whereas endosperm will be triploid. So kindly keep in mind this thing. Okay, now let us see the locules of the ovary. It's in the page number 5.53. Okay, so it is the basal swollen part containing the ovules. Within the ovary we will find the ovules. So the basal swollen part that contains the ovule generally is known as the locules of the ovary. And depending upon the number of locules, ovary may be unilocular, bilocular, trilocular, tetralocular, pentalocular, and we can say multilocular. So uni means what? 1. So just we can see the presence of only 1 locule. So this is called unilocular, like in P. Bilocular with 2 locules. Can you see? First locule, second locule. Here we can see the presence of 2 locules. It is called bilocular, like in mustard. These are the ovules part. Okay. Tri means presence of how many locule? 3 locule. First locule, second locule, and the third locule. These are the ovules. Do not get confused. So there are 3 locules, so it's called trilocular. Tetra means 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when there are 4 locules, it is called tetralocular, like forming osmium. Penta means 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when there are 5 locules, it is called pentalocular, and when there is more than 5 with many locules, then it is called multilocular. Okay, so in the locules or chambers are present the oval outgrowth called the ovule. So within the locules we will find the ovules, which are attached to the placenta. Alright, and on fertilizations, ovules will form the seed, ovary will change into the fruits or the pericarp. Clear? So remember what is the locus of the ovary and what are different types of ovary depending on the presence of the locules. So we have got uni, presence of 1 locule, bilocular means presence of 2 locules, trilocular means presence of 3 locules, tetralocular means presence of 4 locules, pentalocular means presence of 5 locules, and when we have got multiple locules, it is called multilocular. So kindly go to it. Okay, it's in page number 5.53. The next one we will talk about the number of carpels. So depending upon the number of carpels present, Gynosium can be monocarpellary, that means presence of 1 carpel, bicarpellary, presence of 2 carpel, tricarpellary, presence of 3 carpel, tetracarpellary, presence of 4 carpel, okay, pentacarpellary, presence of 5 carpel, multicarpellary, presence of more than 5 carpels or many carpels. Okay, so kindly go to the example also. This is very easy. Okay, monocarpellary, bicarpellary, tri, tetra, penta, and multi. Okay, now let's go to the next one, the question of carpels. Okay, so the carpels may be 2 or maybe more or maybe free or fused. Okay, yeah. So when the carpels are free, look over here, the free conditions of the carpels. So when the carpels are free, it is called apocarpus, that is bicarpellary apocarpus. Okay, The fuse conditions of the carpel is called syn carpels. So when the carpels are fused, they are called syn carpels. Clear? That is bicarpel syn carpels, tricarpel syn carpels. So syn carpels generally means the fused carpels. So apocarpels means when the carpels are free, and syn carpels means when the carpels are fused. Just remember this thing. Okay. When the carpels are fused by the stigma and style, then the carpels are said to be apocarpels. One more time. When the carpels are fused by the stigma or by stigma and the style, then it is called apocarpels. So remember this thing also. Next one. What is inflorescence? Inflorescence is in the page number. I'll open the page number for the inflorescence. Page number 5.33. Okay, page number 5.33. You will find the topic inflorescence. Page number 5.33. Now, what is inflorescence? It is mainly the arrangement and the distribution of the flower on the floral axis. Okay, so inflorescence means the arrangement and the distribution of the flowers on the floral axis, right? And whenever the floral axis or the stalk bears the inflorescence, it is called pedicels, and the flat pedicel is called the receptacles. So depending upon the types of inflorescence or arrangement of flowers on the floral axis, we have got two types. Then we have to go with only the two types of inflorescence. So there are three types. You can see over here: racemose, cymos, mixed, or specialized. 4 types. But we have to go with only the 2 types of inflorescence according to the syllabus. So we are only going to look about the racemose and the cymos type of inflorescence. Here also there is no need to go through the subtype of racemose and the cymos inflorescence. We only have to go through the definition of this type of inflorescence and the difference between these two. Okay, so no need to go in details about the mixed or specialized, and no need to go in details about the subtypes of racemose and the cymos inflorescence. So we will see the definition and the differences. So what do you mean by racemose inflorescence? Okay, it is indeterminate or indefinite inflorescence in which the pedicel, you can see over here, in which the pedicels or the main axis, it will continue to grow. Okay, the main axis or the pedicels will continue to grow indefinitely, and the growing part, let's say this growing part of the pedicels or the main stalk, it will not end into a flower. Okay, so it will not terminate into a flower. So in case of racemose inflorescence, the main stalk or the pedicel will keep on growing continuously, and it will not terminate, it will not end into a flower. So it gives off flowers on the lateral side. So on the lateral sides you can see the presence of flower, but at the terminal sides it will not end into a flower, but mainly it forms the flower buds, but it will keep on growing, it will keep on growing, but mainly on the lateral sides it will keep on the flower. So this main stalk keep on growing. Okay, it keeps on growing, but it will not terminate into a flower, but on the lateral sides we will see the presence of flower. Okay, so here what happens is that in case of racemose inflorescence, since the main stalk is continues to grow and the flowers are present on the lateral sides, so the lower part of the flower or the outer flower older. So that means these flowers which are present at the lower sides, this will be older flower than the upper one. So when we compare between these two flowers, so these flowers will be older, this will be young. Okay, similarly when we compare between these two flowers, this will be older, this will be young. Okay, so racemose inflorescence is simple if the pedicels is unbranched, and compound when the pedicel is branched. So when the pedicels will be branched, it is called compound. When it is simple, it is not unbranched. So look at the figure B. So this is the main pedicels. Can you see the long stalk? This is the main pedicels, but this main pedicel does not end into a flower. You can see the presence of flower over here, and at the lower end we will find the older flower, and at the upper part we will see the younger flower. Okay, and let's go to the cymos inflorescence. Here the primary axis or the pedicel terminates into a flower. So here in case of cymos inflorescence, the pedicels, this particular part which are continuously growing in case of racemose and was not ending into a flower, here in case of cymos it will end up giving a flower. You can see over here, this is the pedicel is growing up, but it will end up bearing a flower. This is absent in case of racemose. Okay, but the growth continues throughout the lateral buds also. These buds give rise to the lateral branches which bears the flower. So you can see over here the lateral branches are coming out and the lateral branches give rise to the flower. So here also you can see lateral branches coming out and lateral branches are giving out a flower. Clear? So here the flowers are arranged in a basipetal or centrifugal succession. So here the upper part of the flowers will be older one and the lower part will be the younger one, because it's continuously growing on but it's ending on bearing a flower. Okay, but in case of racemos, if you remember, the lower one was the older one and the upper one was the younger one, but here the upper one will be the older one and the lower one will be the younger one. Clear? So here you can see over here the flowers coming out over here. So this is the older one and these are the young ones. So this is called Cymos Information. So look over here, flowers are borne laterally, the growing point continues to growing. Here the flowers are terminal origin, the growing point of the pedicel terminates into a flower. So in racemos, the main stalk or the pedicels are growing continuously and the flowers are present on the lateral sides. But in Cymos Inflorescence, the flowers, that is main stalk, will mainly change into a flower. Okay, racemos, number of flowers will be indefinite, but in case of Cymos, number of flowers is definite. We can usually see. Okay, racemos types, flowers will develop all around the pedicels, but in case of Cymos, flowers are present only on one side. And arrangement of flowers is acropetal. Lower flower will be older, upper one will be younger. And Cymos, there will be basipetal or centrifugal. The upper one will be the older, the lower one will be the younger, just opposite. And racemos, loss of growing point suggests the formation of new flower, and Cymos, loss of growing point results in the loss of only one flower. Okay, so in racemos, you can see over there that loss of growing point suggests the formation of new flower. But in case of Cymos, loss of growing points will result in loss of only one flower, which will be older flower. So here we have finished the chapter Morphology of Flowering Plants. Whatever I have taught you, kindly go to that only. No need to go to the extra topics because they are not there in your syllabus. Okay, in the new syllabus they have been removed. So whatever I have taught you in the two classes, just go through that only. Okay, so in the next chapter or the next class, we'll begin with the new chapter. Thank you. This was for today. See you in next class.